I did leave a package of some music that I'd written with a note saying, "Dear Maestro Bernstein, I'd very much like to meet you," you know. And I thought that would be the end of it. Well, here I sit today. But I got a phone call from his secretary, and about 8 weeks later, he'd been in Vienna working, and he was going to conduct the New York Philharmonic. So I went. He invited me to come backstage, and I did, and we talked, and I met him, and he was very generous, and he was interesting and interested, and he wanted to know about me, and so on and so forth. And I thought, what a wonderful man, you know. And I was also very surprised at how small he was, because he was always this larger-than-life figure on the television and everything, but he only came up to about here on me. Maybe that's why we had such a successful relationship. Yeah, he would have to listen to me. I don't know, but but then when I ended up interviewing for the first time, he asked me about my music because I'd given him various styles. Some was more the European style of atonality, using 12-tone techniques and what we were being taught, and the other was just more simple American tonal music. And he asked me, he said, which one is the real person? And I told him it was the tonal, the the tonal music. And he said, well, that's where you write from. You write from honesty. And in a way, he was also talking about himself, because he had such a difficult time with academia, because he wrote tonal music. He wrote some of the most beautiful songs ever written. And people didn't consider that serious composing. Well, but he was telling me that is serious. If you write and you're honest, that's serious composing. So I took it to heart, and I've been writing that kind of music ever since. He knew about my music. I mean, I didn't feel comfortable in my position to use his importance to promote my career, because I wasn't there to promote my career. I was there to help him, and that was my responsibility. But he always asked about my music. He was curious. He would listen to it. He would give me comments. And so it was a loving, supportive relationship. You know, he loved coming to Vienna, and it brought him, he felt very comfortable here, and he looked forward to the box of Demel chocolates that would arrive. And he looked forward to the kippa from his friend Renata Wunderwer. And he looked forward to having dinners at the Visors. And even after late nights, after concerts, when most of Vienna is closed, we would go to the Würstel stand right off the Kärtnerstrasse to get a bite to eat. You know? And that he felt comfortable doing that. And so he enjoyed Vienna, and he enjoyed being a part of it. And Vienna embraced him, and he embraced it back. By the time I started working with him, he was very involved with the Socialist Party in Austria, and one of his dear friends was Bruno Kreisky. I think when you look at the films of Bernstein in the 70s, he always wore a white pocket handkerchief. But after meeting Bruno Kreisky, Chancellor Kreisky gave him a red pocket square, and he adopted that as his signature. So he always wore a red pocket square from then on until his passing. And that was to show solidarity with Bruno Kreisky and the socialists. When I think of Leonard Bernstein in Vienna, I think about his love of the music making that took place in Vienna. He loved making music with the Vienna Philharmonic. And for him, that was the most important aspect of coming to Vienna, plus his many dear friends that he had in the city. It became an adopted city for him. He loved coming to Vienna, and he actually became a different person when he came to Vienna. There was a seriousness that came out of him that was manifest in Vienna that was different than most other places that he visited. Every city had a different personality for him, but Vienna, he had a great respect for the musicians and for his friends. Not that he didn't in other cities, but it was just a different level of importance for him. Because historically it was the orchestra of Brahms and of Mahler and all these great musicians, and he felt that responsibility as being a part of that long tradition. It was when Lenny was going to conduct the Beethoven Seventh with the Vienna Philharmonic. This is a piece that, of course, he has conducted numerous times throughout his lifetime. And he was staying at the Bristol, and I went in to make sure he was ready for rehearsal, and he was sitting there at his desk, a pile of cigarettes that was so high, and buckets of coffee, still in his bathrobe. And I said, "Maestro, you have a rehearsal in an hour." And he says, "Beethoven Seventh, I've been up all night. I didn't know the work." Because he felt such a responsibility about doing the Beethoven Seventh again with the Vienna Philharmonic that he wanted to make sure it was new, it was fresh, and that he was in control. And I think that sums it up, because here's a genius saying that he didn't know Beethoven's Seventh, that he wasn't prepared to go in front of the Vienna Philharmonic to conduct the Beethoven Seventh. Well, of course he was, and of course the performance was unbelievable. When we first came to Vienna, when I first came with him, it really wasn't a big topic, but we were here during Passover, and there was this restaurant called the Stadtkrug, where I believe high officials of the Nazi Party used to go. And he insisted on going there at Passover to make a statement. And he enjoyed sitting where these Nazi officials sat, knowing they would be horrified. And the other time that it really came to light was when Waldheim was elected president of Austria. And this bothered him a great deal. And he didn't hold any of the members of the orchestra responsible for that action, but he would always ask me before he would go on, "Is Waldheim in the audience?" And I'd look up to the box, and he wasn't. And so he would go on, because I believe if Waldheim had been there, he would not have conducted. And that was also the year he took the orchestra to Israel for the first time. And that was quite a statement, to take the Vienna Philharmonic to Israel during the time of Waldheim. When it came to politics, he was an American, but he was also a citizen of the world. And he saw the humanitarian issues as a global pursuit. So he didn't stand blindly by the United States, even though he was a true patriot. But when he saw the United States doing something that he thought was not right, such as the Vietnam War, he took a stand against it. Because he believed that humanity is a whole, and that there shouldn't be a great division between people, and that these petty, small, nationalistic kind of demands or needs lead to conflict, which we saw in World War II. And unfortunately, I believe we're repeating them now. He'd be very active at the moment, trying to break down this ignorance, this ignorance that is being repeated. I mean, he'd been doing concerts for Amnesty International. He'd been doing anti-war concerts, anti-nude concerts. He was the first major figure to do a concert to help raise money for AIDS awareness in the world. And this meant a lot to me, that he wasn't just this pop star conductor, that there was so much more to him. And then, well, Leonard Bernstein was a uniquely American artist, and there was no question about that. And that's why he was able to embrace so many different styles of music, because growing up in the United States, he wasn't just exposed to classical music or non-classical music. American music is a melting pot like the country itself. So that's why he was able to incorporate so many different styles in his music. And that makes him uniquely American. Lenny loved conducting, but he considered himself a composer first. But composing is a very difficult pursuit, especially for somebody who loves humanity as much as he did. In his early years as a young composer, he collaborated with Betty Comden and Adolph Green and Jerry Robbins, and he wrote some brilliant musicals. And then he worked with Arthur Lawrence and Stephen Sondheim on West Side Story. And those were collaborative efforts. But as he grew older, the collaborators weren't there. So it became a much more difficult pursuit for him, because sitting alone with a blank sheet of music notes is much more complicated than working with other people. And it also is a very self-confrontational pursuit. And he loved conducting because he loved to make music, and especially with great orchestras like Vienna and New York and the Bayerische Rundfunk and the Concertgebouw and the Israel Philharmonic and Santa Cecilia. He was able to work with the greatest musicians in the world and have fans and people adore him every night. And it's an instant gratification, where composing, you really lay your soul bare. And with so many of Bernstein's compositions, it was ahead of its time. And now we have a whole generation of composers feeling the freedom to use whatever musical style they feel will convey what they're trying to say musically, which is so liberating, and which he was doing 50 some years ago, and being just, ravished for it. But now we have a whole different musical world because of him.